best friends Trey, Sterling, and Matt, the Film Schmucks. What's up, everybody? It's the Film Schmucks here. My name is Matt. We got your boy Trey. Oh, wrong way. Trey. And we got Sterling down below, as always. Before we start our review of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's sci-fi masterpiece classic, according to some. According to us, we'll find out. Nostalgia is real, is back, baby. And I want to give a special shout out to Nostalgia, a longtime listener, longtime fan since the beginning. He's surprised. I mean, I don't know if this shocked you guys when you saw he just dropped some comments on No Way Home.
He said something?
Yeah, you didn't see that? I messaged you guys about it.
Oh, I didn't see
After being gone forever, he just like left a few comments on the Spider-Man review and was like, it was classic Nostalgia. He was like, you guys are whack, or you were like, you're whack about this or whatever. And then he specifically timestamped Trey's rant on Aunt May, and he was like savage, like this is truly savage or something. And I was like, damn.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Also, Ezra, the 7-year-old, said that he completely agreed with Trey's take on Aunt May being the bad guy. I don't. You convinced the 7-year-old. I'll tell you that. Okay.
Yes.
And that's the main audience. So. Anyway,
didn't Christy kind of agree too?
Yeah. Well, I agreed a little bit too, like in the sense of like I understand what you were saying.
She's not the bad, like she's the villain, but she's yeah. People got my point.
Yeah.
Except Sterling.
You're talking past him. All right. No, I love that conversation. It was really good. So 2001. By the way, we've on Film Schmucks, one of the first reviews we ever did was Clockwork Orange. Have we watched any other Kubricks? I don't think we did.
No.
I was going to. I messaged you guys, said that one of my picks was another one of his, but it just left HBO Max, and I cannot wait to do that.
And you didn't say which one it was. Full Metal Jacket, perhaps?
No, he wasn't even alive when it hit theaters. It was
Eyes Wide
last
Shut.
one, a classic, one that many young men love to watch, called Eyes Wide Shut. So I cannot wait to do that one with you guys.
Woo! Orgies, baby.
I mean, it's Tom Cruise in there, right? Nicole Kidman. Let's go. If anything, it'll be good because of them, not because of Stanley. He's ruined everything else in his life. But we'll talk about that a little bit.
Hey.
All right. Do you guys want to get into it? Do you guys want me to start off? I mean,
you know how the movie ends. I'm not gonna go into the ending, but you know the music they use, that classic "ba-ba,"
Yeah.
Well, you guys know they did that in the beginning, obviously.
Uh-huh.
When the screen cut to black at the beginning, like, oh, thank God, the movie's over. And then it went to then the caveman scene. I'm like, oh, that's how I felt at the end of the movie, because it felt like deja vu, hearing the same music at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
But then we went into this. I wrote down. I said, then we went into this 15-minute Geico commercial with cavemen. I didn't understand that at all. I'll just say that. But I mean, what a waste of 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's actually, I read a trivia. This movie's about 2 hours long, maybe
2.5 almost.
Really, I thought it was 2. It said 2 hours and 12 on the one I watched.
Oh,
okay.
Either way. Yeah, maybe it just felt like 5 hours, But
it had an intermission.
True.
Yeah,
True.
I know. Yeah. And the intermission was about 10 seconds, and I can pee fast, but not that fast. All right.
No, it kept on fast forward. When is this intermission done?
You just showed your hand that you watched this on a tablet.
Oh, uh-oh.
Busted.
No, I watched the first hour on my big screen TV, but I fell asleep, and I woke. You know how you can wake up, but you didn't think you were asleep? You're like, oh, okay, I'll watch the rest of it tomorrow. And I guess I slept through 40 minutes of it, so I watched about almost 2/3 of it on my tablet. So you got me.
So how
Oh,
did you really feel about this movie?
Oh, you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
I wanted to see what you guys thought about the 15-minute Geico commercial they put on.
Well, okay,
pretty funny.
I can reference.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that opening sequence is one of my favorite. Is might even be my favorite part of the movie, maybe or one of my favorite parts of the movie. I think it's one of the best parts of the movie. I think it's like,
in hindsight,
yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I'll say this because maybe it'll springboard off you guys about this movie. This is one of those movies where there's a lot to talk about and nothing to talk about at the same time, you know. But I'll say this. I think this is the second time I saw the movie. I saw it once before, and I only remembered a couple of scenes from it. But to me, there's some movies like that are longer that I don't like, and some that I do. A lot of times it depends on the material. This is one of those movies that's a little more vague and very long, and it has a lot of like drawn out like cinematography and stuff. Sometimes I don't like that. Sometimes I do. For me, it's very similar to The Shining in the sense that The Shining is not like any other horror movie. It taps into some kind of weird horror, right? Where it's got some like traditional horror stuff where it's like the little girls being creepy and stuff, but a lot of it has to do with the tension and like the kind of guy losing his mind slowly. To me, this movie taps into a certain kind of sci-fi that it's a certain kind of sci-fi that really and I know it's based off of a book. I've never read the book, but I have read a lot of like classic 60s, 70s sci-fi is kind of sort of my favorite era of sci-fi. And I have read like books from books that have a similar tone and feel to it as this movie. I haven't seen a lot of movies go this way with sci-fi. Sometimes they tap into it a little bit. Like obviously Interstellar was clearly inspired by this movie in different ways. But so I understand that this movie, if you're not into this kind of sci-fi or not like at all, then I could see this being like way too slow. What the fuck? Why? It's boring. It's not making a point. There's not a narrative, like that kind of thing. For me, I've watched it twice. I'm really into it because I just kind of like the. Also, I think with Kubrick, I specifically like Kubrick's cinematography so much that I can just watch this stuff. And also, just in the like effects nerd category, the fact that this movie came out a year before we landed on the moon, or before we had any space video or pictures or anything, and it looks so good for 1968 that it's like kind of insane when you compare it to like Star Wars came out like almost 10 years later, and this movie looks better as far as a lot of the matte paintings and the effects in space. So that's why it's like I give it a pass for the most part on the slowness. There's only one scene to me that I would rather just skip through if I watched it again, not completely, and it is the scene where he's going through the wormhole, because I think that could be about half as long. I know that at the time in the 60s, kids were, doing LSD and watching it in the theaters, which I actually read trivia that's a big reason why the movie ended up making some money was because teenagers would go watch it high. But
I think he was high when he did this scene.
I wish I was high watching that scene. I mean, my good grief. I like it, but it is too long for me, that part. Other than that, I don't have a gripe.
Don't tell Christy I pressed that button a couple times during that scene. I'm like, you showed the Grand Canyon in opposite colors like way too many times. Like,
yeah,
I don't give a shit about the Grand Canyon. What's going on right now?
You have to, Trey. You have to quit picking movies you're not gonna like.
Yeah,
I don't know how I would know I wouldn't like it.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Sorry. That's a good point. I guess you can't know until you see it.
Secondly, I was expecting something masterful, a real sci-fi epic, and this was it only got interesting until Hal and started to become his own person, like what we see more now, like with the Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf. Stuff like that. That's when it was only interesting for 15-20 minutes, I guess. Spoiler alert, I didn't like it, but I mean, there was no story up until then, and after that, there was no story. I didn't even recognize that. I was so out of them, like the LSD trip. I was so because it was showing them a ship going towards Jupiter or whatever. The little block of charcoal, in space. I had no idea that was a wormhole. I'm like I just thought he was going crazy,
Yeah. Yeah, that scene was like a
Well,
little not exactly obvious what was happening.
yeah. Okay. I will comment on all of that. But I just wanted to give a definition real quick of what Odyssey means. So according to Merriam-Webster, it is a long wandering or voyage usually marked by many changes of fortune. So,
Well, make a
Trey,
good
you say there's
story.
no well,
Make a
Trey, you
good
say there's
story
no
with it.
okay, let me talk. So, the reason why I enjoy this movie for what it is, I totally understand being bored by it or just being left out of it because the pacing is so slow. I totally get that. But for me, I kind of appreciate the time that it was made in and the fact that the effects are so good. It's that entertains me as a film fan. And there's a lot of subtlety and as far as like what is this pillar? Like what is it some kind of alien species? Like is it like there's not really any kind of answer to it, but it is like fascinating the kind of the mystery of all the whatever species this is that's guiding humanity. Um, and so that's why I think the first 15 minutes is not it's not a waste of time because it's showing the very beginning that whatever this thing is, it's been guiding man to innovate throughout from the beginning all the way to its end to its rebirth. Whatever we can talk about the ending because there is a lot of confusion. There's a lot of conflicting theories about what the ending means. But as far as just the overall scope of it, this movie's not a. There's not really a plot. It's very much like experiential. It's all about the experience. That's what I have to say. And so I do think one thing that could have been great, and hopefully they play this at some Cinerama Dome, but this movie was shown in like different cinemas back in the 60s, and that's where it's like a curved screen or whatever. Um, and I feel like seeing it in that format would probably make it a little bit more immersive. But again, I enjoy it for what it is. So, but we can get more into
I
it
want to
later.
watch it in VR. That's what I want to do.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
I want to get naked, oil myself up, put the VR headset on, and go to town.
well,
And then watch the movie.
and I'll enjoy myself watching. But anyway, you both make a good point. I know Ty would have a heyday watching this thing. I know.
Well, I watched it with him.
I mean,
I know he
great.
had a heyday.
So the visuals are great. You're exactly right, Matt. Even better than Star Wars, which was 10 years in the future, film wise, making wise. But Trilling, you even said it yourself. There's really no plot. There's nothing to grab a hold of. And I was going to ask you, what's the story? And you just said yourself, no plot, so no story. What was the cavemen? They didn't show them making fire because they saw a spark. It was just there. I don't see how that correlates to innovation. So what in
Well,
your
The
guys' eye?
so
innovation.
you see the apes touching it, and then or I guess it's pre-human apes, and then they're touching it, rubbing it, lathering it up and all that, and then very quickly after the one of the apes starts understanding tools, like he very quickly starts learning to use a weapon. And then they take over that other thing, and then and then of course Christy noticed this. I didn't quite notice it. That ape specifically started standing upright a little more than the other ones as well. But the main thing is he touches it. He and then he gets the idea in my mind. Obviously, it's interpreted is that he got some kind of intelligence. This is a super intelligence
He touched it.
from
Because he touched
aliens,
it?
and I'm guessing because he touched it that there was some kind of super intelligence, and then he throws the bone up in the air, which then cuts to what most people think is a spaceship, but what it's actually cutting to is a nuclear missile, apparently. That's like a thing I've read, is that what it's the bone is cutting to. So it's a little bit of a message, or not a message, but a little bit seems to me like that it's symbolic of here's the very first weapon of man leading up to the now, the weapon that can destroy
Ultimate
worlds,
weapon.
the ultimate weapon of man. And so be that as it may, I do think the obelisk or whatever it is, the slab is us from super intelligent aliens, and that leads into the final scene.
Yeah, yeah. Which it's kind of interesting because like movies like Interstellar kind of had that same kind of overarching plot of fifth dimensional beings kind of guiding humanity, and so this is a lot more subtle. It's not really like it's not clear cut, but there are little clues here and there, especially after watching it a couple times. So. But yeah,
Mm.
I Trey, I totally understand you like not liking this. Like I know plenty of people that don't like this. And like I don't necessarily disagree with your assessment or your reason for not liking it. What? What, Matt?
What do you mean you disagree with his reason for not liking it? If
No,
he
no,
didn't
he
like it,
doesn't necessarily. You
oh,
missed the.
cut that out. Sorry.
No, so I'm not here to debate or anything like that. I'm just letting you know from a certain point of view, there are things about it that I enjoy. And obviously, every single section of this movie, there's almost like there's almost no cuts. I mean, there are cuts, but it's like you feel like you're there with the characters for whatever amount of time that they're shown on screen. You know what I mean? Like there's almost like no it's like you're feeling the passage of time in real time in a
Hmm.
sense. And so for better or for worse, like you can obviously it's very long and drawn out, but I appreciated kind of feeling like I'm with these characters. Um, and so also the fact that there would be sequences of music while the ships are just, kind of slowly going through space, that kind of felt like I was actually a part of that journey. So,
Yeah, I think Kubrick's really great. This movie reminded me a little bit of The Shining as far as like the sound design. That I noticed that's a big factor to me with these longer movies is good sound design will make me, because like I don't know why it's the same thing with The Shining. I find that I can just kind of sink into the couch and I'm just zoned in, even if like nothing's happening or whatever. It's like something about the cinematography and the sound design. And
oh yeah.
I love the sound effects in this movie for a lot of stuff. Like specifically, I love the weird wailing, like singing, like so I guess it's not singing, but the weird like minstrel, like orchestra
Yeah.
sound of the obelisk. I love all that shit. So
It's creepy.
it's really
It's so
creepy. Yeah,
eerie.
yeah.
And
And
it
that's
feels
all.
ancient.
Yeah, although that's like such a weird thing. So it's one of those things where I can kind of sink into it and enjoy it, and especially the first part of the movie, the slower part of the first movie. There's so many like visual effects and stuff going on that are interesting to me just by nature of how they did it at the time. I mean, even like the pen just floating next to the guy and she picks it up. If I didn't read how they did that, I would be kind of confused on how they did that because it's clearly not green screen or anything, and it's not like invisible thread. And I guess all they did was just take glass and they have the pin suspended in glass for most of those shots in front of the camera. So it's just a real pin in like it's suspended in glass moving around. But I'm like little things like that where I was like, man, this is really cool. But to the that's to its benefit because you can go, wow, this was really cool for 1968. On the other hand, it's not 1968, it's 2021. And if you look at it for what it is, those scenes are really slow because if you're in 1968, you're like, whoa, this looks so cool. A space station. How did they do that? You're probably mesmerized at all of these slow scenes. Whereas now, I'm like impressed because of what they did at the time, but I'm not like mesmerized and taken in by it in the same way that they probably were then. So I definitely get that. Why
Yeah.
I get that part of it too. Like,
I mean, there are times where I definitely would kind of like, I would feel the length of it for sure. And, I would definitely yawn quite often. Um,
damn, scathing
but not,
review.
no, no, no. But here's the thing, and maybe I'm rationalizing this, but I feel like you can still be engaged in a movie, but still feel the weight of how long it is
Hmm.
at the same time. Like I think sometimes those can be mutually exclusive. And I really think for me, this is one of those movies where, yeah, I definitely would like, I'd have to like pause it sometimes or whatever. But again, it wasn't like I wasn't ever like bored out of my mind, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Um, so I was still engaged for what they were presenting, and context does matter, like you said. Um, it's impressive how far they went for a movie in the '60s. So
Um, uh, Man, so you said okay. Did I miss something in the movie where I know it's called 2001? Is it set in 2001 or 2021?
It's set in 2001. When I was saying 2021, I just meant, I guess it's 2022 now. My bad. I was just referencing the time I'm watching it
Okay.
in. Sorry, not what time the movie's
Is
taking place.
is
It's
did
supposed to
is
be.
there
I think it's supposed to be 2001.
is this kind of
Yeah.
like well not like but like I mean Back to the Future nearly got a couple things correct. The Cubs won the World Series a year later. I mean, did they really? Is that what Kubrick and his writers thought was going to be happening, or was this just a random? Is there interviews you guys read? Something he
well,
said that he
Well, the
is this
book,
what he thought 2001 was going to look like?
the
Ar-
book, right?
yeah, Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote the book, which is what all the stuff is based on. I think specifically, I think it's sort of a Back to the Future thing where they just kind of was like, well, this is maybe where we'll be at, which it's not too far off, honestly. I think where it's off is the casualness of the space station, where they're just like
Hmm.
people walking around in the space station and like, oh, come join us, and he sits down next to those French people, and starts talking to him at the beginning. That seems to be the main thing that's off a little bit, where it's like you don't have just like seemingly regular rich people just hanging out. I mean, maybe we'll be there in 10 more years, but for 2001,
Yeah.
it's pretty off. So,
Well, there
I
was a lot of like space innovation during that time.
mhm.
Like a lot of like I know like the World's Fair in New York City had a lot of like different exhibits of where space travel is going to go, and like,
Yeah.
oh, we're gonna have flying cars in a couple decades. So
I uh I just kind of comment on. I know you both. I know Sterling likes soundtracks and sound editing or whatever in movies, and you just mentioned how you liked it. I'm the odd man out. I wrote down, and so I'm not saying this to crap on you guys. I said soundtrack was shit. Like for me, it took me out. Like for you, you liked it, so I'm cool. You like it, and for The Shining, because as you like you said, it's the same director. It's similar. I like it in The Shining. Here, I'm
Yeah.
like, just what? It just was weird in the scenes they had it.
Well, I
Not
think,
all of it was
yeah.
bad,
Yeah. Well, I
but some of
think,
it just took me out.
well, there really isn't a soundtrack in the movie. I mean, I guess there's a soundtrack
Well,
as far as audio. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's really
yeah,
the only time they play music is the opening scene with the Earth and the ending scene. They don't really play that much music the rest of the time in the movie. They just kind of play sound effects, which is
yeah.
which
Or
is
so, yeah.
actually interesting. But I can definitely see, yeah, I like the intent. Like, I mean, probably I don't know. It's tough. There's like three scenes I really like in the movie, but probably my favorite part of the movie has to do a lot with the sound design, which is probably the most action packed in the movie is Hal and that whole sequence. But when the main guy kind of ends up going in to try to shut down Hal, there's kind of this constant like oxygen sound going off, and to me
the
it adds to
breathing,
the intensity of the scene. But I could also see that being annoying to people.
it's repetitive.
Yeah,
No
that
doubt.
I almost muted it a couple times. I muted, or not really muted, but I turned it down because I'm like, it's like just ringing. And for me, in that scene, I didn't know why it was tense. because he was in control, shutting him down. So I didn't know why he wasn't sweating. I'd been cool if they would add a little sweat drop to make it show he was, it was intense. But I'm like, you're shutting him down. Why? You're in control.
Yeah.
So I didn't know why.
Well,
I didn't feel a reason for the music or whatever.
I think the
Well, it's just
intensity
a
kind of
sound
came in the
effect.
fact. Yeah, I think the intensity for me came in with the fact that Hal kept trying to plead with him,
No, I like that part.
and
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and for me, I did feel kind of bad because it's like, yeah, obviously Hal really effed up, and he tried to kill both of them. But at the same time, you know, I think the actor did a really good job kind of expressing how kind of sad he felt because obviously they've been together for years on this expedition, I
Hmm.
assume. And so, and Hal has obviously become more than just a machine. He is kind of a person. And so, yeah, that
Yeah.
was,
That
it was
sequence is so
a lot of
good.
tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Him. Whenever it kind of resets, like as if when it kind of resets Hal as he's unplugging the things, and he's like, "Would you like me to sing a song for you?" That's like that whole sequence is so like eerie and weird and like, but like I don't know. I love that sequence a lot.
Yeah.
The lighting and
It's
everything, the red lighting. I mean, I think the imagery of this movie, even if you don't ever watch the movies, like you end up seeing the imagery everywhere in cinema. Like as far as like, there's so many classic shots in this movie, and one of them is him in
Hmm.
that red room with the red on him in the helmet and everything. It looks so like gorgeous.
Well, even shots like when it's just a close up of Hal and the little red
Hmm.
dot in the middle, there's something so intimidating about that
Yeah,
to me.
I love
it's
right.
Um,
funny.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, it's something
Well,
that
I was just gonna say right before intermission, I think I love that when he's kind of reading the lips. The movie doesn't necessarily. I mean, later he straight up says, "I read your lips," basically. But in that scene, the movie doesn't like make it super obvious what's happening, but it does it in the cinematography where it's sort of like it's showing from his perspective. It's showing the lips moving and going back and forth, and then it just cuts to intermission, and I'm just like I love that setup where you're like, oh shit, like something shit's about to go down after intermission,
mhm.
baby. Let me grab a popcorn and squirt one off in the bathroom real quick to ease the tension, and let's watch the rest of this movie.
I don't know how to go after that. And Sterling said something that I just wrote down while we were talking here. You mentioned he was trying to kill them both, and I'm like, well, it ended up like the buddy killed his friend. He just let him go, just to float off
Yeah.
in space. I'm like, let him die.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably already dead, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
It did look funny though, because I actually mentioned that as well.
There were like four arms. You can't use one of them to hold on to his tushy.
Yeah.
God.
I was
Yeah.
like, this dude
There,
is
there-
good.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say there's definitely a lot of nitpicks, especially with that whole section of the movie. I was kind of confused a little bit. Whenever they're in the pod, they're trying to like fix the satellite. Why would they have the pod that far back from the satellite? Like why wouldn't he be? You know how he would like launch himself out,
Yeah.
and then he would just like float slowly towards the satellite.
Why
I
wouldn't
just
they just
like,
get real close to it? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, because obviously the thing can move, right? It can't
Yeah,
just, it's
yeah.
not just stationary. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's
Did
interesting.
they did they insinuate that Hal killed the three got people in the pod?
Yeah, I love that scene too, where he kills. It's more than three people. He kills all the people left. I think it shows like five heartbeats. Like all, I love that because it's so brutal, and it's like he's basically massacring these people, but in like the most tame way, which is he's just letting the life support go on the pods. And there's something about it where it's so cold and calculated and brutal, and you just slowly see the heartbeats go to flat lines. But yeah, I think he kills all of them.
Well,
I don't know why, but
yeah. So it was interesting because they have that doctor in the beginning that's talking to everybody, and I didn't realize the year this came out. I thought it was after that we landed on the moon. But I wrote down. I said, "Gosh darn," because they're just going to the moon, correct? Right from Earth to the moon.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, This guy had enough time to take 2 naps and take a crap. Usually it takes like no time at all to get to the moon. Like, I mean, I thought that was hilarious. He was able to take a midnight nap, wake up, have some tea, some breakfast, talk to some people, take a crap, and then take another nap. I'm like, my goodness, it's only 254,000 miles away. Give me a break.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. What do you mean? He had
both. I was like, it didn't take them 3 days.
Okay, yeah. You're saying it should take them way longer.
He should not have had to go to sleep twice to go to the moon. Let's just be real.
Are you saying it didn't take as long as it should have, or it took too long?
It took way too long. To me, I'm not a scientist. I'm just saying.
I don't know how long it takes for people to get to the moon, but I'm pretty sure it's a long time.
I mean, walking
3
days.
days.
2.5 days.
Oh, 3 days. Okay.
Yeah,
Wait,
3 days. I think it took 3 days for the Apollo 11, if I'm not mistaken, to get to the moon.
This is the future. The future should be faster. All right.
That's a true point, and that sounds like a good ad for like Nike or something.
Hey,
the future is fast.
It was the 60s. Okay, the 60s were
though.
slow.
60s. Yeah. We've heard it before. Nostalgia. Get on this guy.
Yes.
You know what's funny? I noticed this too. Read these rules before you take a crap. There's like 10 rules. This huge.
Yeah.
Paragraphs.
I was reading all the trivia for the movie, and it said Kubrick said that's the only intentional joke in the movie is that joke.
Okay.
That was supposed to be funny, but that's the only thing in the movie that he meant to be funny, which I guess probably means that there's stuff that other people thought was funny, and he acknowledged that by saying this is the only thing that was supposed to be funny.
Well, the ending is kind of funny with the giant baby.
That shit gets me like hyped on shit. I see that little baby spinning around the earth, and I'm like, fuck yeah, get it, baby. I fucking love it, dude.
Are you guys being serious?
What?
No, there is a baby. There really is
hilarious.
a baby.
No, I know, but why? It's really funny to you? It's a joke? Is it a joke?
No,
the way the movie, in my opinion, the way it was shot and the majestic music in the background, it was kind of funny.
This giant baby
kinda
looking
laughed.
at the earth. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it looks like the seed of Chucky too. But
Kubrick would be turning over in his grave here on that take of yours.
Hey, but I like the movie more than you, so.
Doesn't matter. He's the director. It's one joke. And
I thought that there's an interesting thing about it, by the way, that I thought's worth mentioning is like, it's funny how parody can affect something because like I said, this is the second time I watched the movie, so I think I ignored some of the stuff more. But this movie was parodied so much, like the fact that the music in this movie was in every comedy. I feel like in the early 2000s, it was like every time there's a slow-mo scene of like some goofy scene in a movie where they're trying to like where chaos is happening, there's a food fight or something, it would always play that like that whole thing at the beginning. And it's funny because it's hard for me to hear it now without thinking of comedy because of how comedies sort of use that as a parody so much. And then of course
Also,
there's several lines in the movie, like Hal's the whole like I can't let you do that, Dave, or what. It's like that was parodied so much.
Oh yeah. Also, it's actually Ric Flair's theme music as well, which is cool.
Yeah.
One thing that I liked, because the beginning of that soundtrack is played so much, but I like hearing the full version of it because I feel like the ending of that soundtrack is actually really good, especially with the organ at the end. It just feels majestic and like religious at the same time. I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay, Sterling, you want to explain the ending, or Matt? Because you said somebody said that the ending has a good explanation or something.
I don't think anyone said that, but
Nice.
No, I love that ending. I think it's really cool. So yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
It's an interesting ending, yeah.
But I think Sterling specifically said like, "Oh, we'll talk about the ending later," something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Oh,
You did say
yeah.
that.
I
What's the
mean,
reason for this? What
I
is it
mean,
a
there's a
parody
lot
of
of.
itself?
I don't know if it's a parody. I think probably the most simple explanation is, um, they showed at the beginning the dawn of man, right? Well, the ending is basically the dawn of a new version of man. And
Yeah.
so, um, obviously there's a lot of details that they don't show. There's not really a whole lot of explanation, but essentially this slab, whatever species that it represents, it guides humanity towards its evolution, I guess is a way of putting it. I don't know, Matt, if you have a better explanation. That's kind of
What
what I
Yeah, no,
saw.
I think that's
the
basically
astronaut?
it. That's basically it. So the opening of the movie is this obelisk at the dawn of man, and we see that for some reason the apes are getting some kind of intelligence from it that led them into being able to use weapons, which was some sort of this next evolution from ape into man. And then of course we see that one astronaut, he's going on this mission to the moon. They talk about they don't know what this is. It couldn't be a normal structure geographically. It doesn't make sense. They get there, they touch it, they take pictures with it, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, what the fuck? Now we're just watching these other two astronauts. What the hell are they doing? And then when he's turning off Hal, he gets the message where they didn't know, but the whole mission to Jupiter was that the obelisk was sending like a beam that went directly to Jupiter, like a
Hmm.
coordinates basically. And so that's what this mission was, unbeknownst to the people on board. So when he gets there, the obelisk is there, and it seems like he was sent to these coordinates. And then my guess here is that the super intelligent aliens or whatever basically he either led him into some kind of wormhole, black hole, something like that, and then they're actually basically watching him like almost in his own like as like a zoo animal type thing where he's in this like human cage kind of thing, and that they're basically watching him progress or whatever. And then and that part is probably the most like, well, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but I do think I agree with Sterling that the ending, and Christy said this is what she thought as well, was like, well, once it shows the fetus thing, it's sort of like this is this new super being that's like now it's like the next evolution of like super intelligence.
Hmm.
All right.
I think Kubrick
I,
was
10 out of
on a
10.
little
he was.
let's be honest.
I mean, at
I think he was
least
bonkers,
30,
bro.
30 to 40%, maybe even more than 40% of this movie was just nothing going on. Just like the Grand Canyon, the wormhole. I mean, the ape stuff or
Yeah.
the caveman stuff. I'm like,
It feels like an art installation sometimes. It feels like you're just
Yeah.
looking at like beautiful cinematography without much else going on.
there's a movie we probably will I'll most likely pick in the future called now I forget it. They did a remake with Keanu Reeves. It was from the
Earth stood
50s.
still.
Earth Stood Still. I
The
love
day
that
the Earth
movie.
stood still. Yeah.
And that was made before this. It grabbed my attention. So it's
Yeah.
not like I'm just at like loopy like
No.
No,
this.
I think you're right. This movie is very slow. There's not a lot of action and there's not a lot of direct narrative that's gripping. I mean, I just
Yeah,
watched It's a Wonderful Life again. Me and Christy watched it over Christmas. That movie's way older than this one. I think anyone could sit down and watch It's a Wonderful Life, this really old black and white movie. Of course, they have it colorized, and be totally gripped by George Bailey's story. So I see what you're saying. It's like it's not like they
Yeah.
can't have gripping stories even in the '60s, you know.
I just that's my but the day there stood still. It was more exposition and narrative,
Yeah.
really no action. And I was interested. I had no interest. There was very little dialogue throughout the whole thing. You know,
Yeah.
they were very they said what they wanted to say. Hal, open the door. I'm like, I will not do that. I'm like, please give it a little pizzazz.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, the Wizard of Oz.
I
for
think-
crying out loud.
I
mean, it's entertaining.
here's what I think, dude, is, and I think the fans are gonna get sick of it because we've had this discussion so many times. It's every time we watch any slow burn movie like this, I understand why you wouldn't like the movie. I get why you don't like Blade Runner 2049, and Dune. I get it. They're all the same type of movies.
I
But
love Dune.
I know, I'm just joking.
What?
I'm just kidding. It's just that the
And
criticisms you have of all the other movies it's basically the same type of movie. But anyway, my point is this. That no, my point is this, and it's something. It's just that like it's a movie that's just obviously it's like not for a lot of people. All the things you're saying about it are things that like I like about it. So it's one of those things where it's like there's not like we can't really disagree about it or be like, oh well, it's
Yeah.
bad because it doesn't have a lot of action. It's like if we didn't make movies like that, then it would suck because I wouldn't have movies like that I enjoy. So it's one of those things where it's like Space Odyssey is so different than any other movie, sci-fi movie, and I really like it because of that. Is all those same reasons that someone else wouldn't like it, you know? And, you know, so it's just all of these slow movies are kind of similar in that vein.
I said, The Day There Stood Still it's a pretty slow movie. I really like it. Dune is not as slow as those movies these two. I like it. You're telling us, okay, going back to something you said. Are you saying if they added a little more dialogue, you wouldn't like this movie? Like if it did more to grip more of an audience, you would not like this movie?
I don't
like if
know.
If they cut some of those long wormhole scene or looking at the caveman, cut that in half, you wouldn't like the movie?
Like I said, I think the one scene where if it was shorter, I wouldn't have minded would be the black hole scene. I'm saying that if they added, I mean, I don't know, maybe they could add more stuff to the movie and I wouldn't notice a difference and would still like it. But I was going to say at the beginning, one of the things I was going to say, that trivia thing was that 80 minutes of this movie doesn't have any dialogue in it, apparently, which is pretty crazy that an hour and 20 minutes of the 2-hour movie or whatever has no dialogue. And I don't even think that's including, you know, someone like pausing and starting between sentences and stuff. So, because there's a lot of gaps in between there. So, but to me, that's like a really cool thing. I talk all the time about how I would love to write a movie, like a short film or something that doesn't have any dialogue, because I think that storytelling in that way is really interesting. So it maybe you could add some stuff where there's a little more action and stuff is cut down, and it might still be a better, like, it might be a good movie that was fun to watch, but it wouldn't be the same movie. And I like this movie how it is. So that's the thing. It's like someone could probably re-edit it and make it more entertaining to other people. You know, it's like Blade Runner. They did that. They put him, you know, they have the version the director wanted to make, and they made a theatrical version. But I don't think I would like the theatrical version as much, because I think and maybe other people would like it more that way. It's just you know, it's just a subjective thing.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, Trey, what you're saying, like your issues with it, like, I I agree with your issues. Like, it's one of those movies where I can't really debate you that much on it, because I totally feel you on a lot of your negatives on this movie. But I think one thing that kind of gives me a lot of appreciation for this movie is the fact that, one, it's heavily influential. Um, the things that it does, I really appreciate the way it kind of helped the film genre in general of space movies and kind of science fiction. Um, it's not all perfect. I don't think this is Kubrick's best movie by far, but there are things about it that it kind of pushed a lot of things forward and how to make kind of space exploration movies. And so because of that, I'm kind of internally grateful for it. And um, also the fact that um, the slow burn of it is definitely a taste thing for sure, but I wish more movies would adopt more of what this movie does in its pacing. Not to the fullest extent that this movie does, but I just feel like there could be more of a balance with pacing, not just being like action all the time, but like actually feeling like you're a part of the environment. I feel like that's a thing that's kind of been lost in a lot of movies. So yeah, that's kind of my overall thoughts. So
Nice.
I guess it's kind of like I think it's kind of like, you know, we all talk a lot about like awesome powers and shit. and I love a good I love a good yeah baby, I love a good slapstick comedy. There are
Yeah.
people who could watch a slapstick comedy and be like, it's too goofy. Like we need to like make this way less goofy. It'll be more appealing to people. Because some people fucking hate Austin Powers and Wayne's World and that kind of shit. I tend to not like those people in my life, but they exist. So,
Hey,
then
those
it's
are
like, but I could totally understand why someone would think that Austin Powers was too goofy and they can't stand that kind of humor. But I'd also be like, well, they probably could make a something where it's Austin Powers, but it's more toned down. But then it wouldn't be Austin Powers that I like. So it's like I guess I look at it that way. It's like there are other science fiction movies that I actually even that I do like better that don't do the same things this movie do. Like 2049 has way more of a narrative and way more action in it. And I probably like that overall as a movie better. But I'm like, but I do appreciate 2001 as just being different, like and weird. But yeah, it's
Well,
I've only seen it twice. I don't know when I'll watch it again. It could be like a decade. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Yeah.
a movie
Oh
that's
yeah.
like super fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's not like the whole gang's here. Let's put on 2001 and party, baby.
Yeah. It's not like that at all.
I guess my question, I guess to make it, I have my question a little bit or make more sense would be if there was 55 minutes of no dialogue compared to 80, would you would still think it would be a different movie?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. It's hard to say because
Did you like?
there's
You
a
said the wor-
yeah,
the
there
wor-
could be a
wormhole
version.
one.
Yeah, there could be a version of it that's 55 instead of 80 that I could probably like in the same way. So it kind of depends on where it's cut and that
Okay.
sort of thing. But I'm with you. Like, yeah, there probably could be, and I'd be interesting to see. Like, I'm tempted to I'm tempted to download it, put it in my thing, and cut that wormhole scene down by about 6 minutes. You know what I'm saying? But
For sure.
but yeah, it's one of those things where the reason that it's kind of even specific on this movie. The reason I think I'm a little so hesitant about that is because Kubrick is so specific about like shots and stuff that I wonder if like if it was edited down, it's like hard to imagine that it would still be the same thing he envisioned or something. But who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I don't know. I think it might not even be noticeable if you cut a few minutes here and there.
Yeah.
And like I said, and I actually agree. Dude, part of it is that some of the stuff where at the time he was probably like, "This is so visually stunning. We got to show this for 10 minutes," and it's like now it's like, dude, I can have that on my Windows XP screensaver, bro. Like that's like it's not that
True.
visually stimulating. So then it's like maybe it doesn't need to be that long. Like well, maybe the reason he had the wormhole scene be so because me and Christy were thinking about that. It's like they didn't really have CGI or anything. So like we were saying it's like all they could do was manipulate color on film, which means they probably did some weird shit with paint and had it like circle or something, and then inverted the colors or something, which is
It kind of
impressive.
looked like lava lamps too.
Yeah.
I wonder if they used
One
like
of them,
lava
yeah.
They
lamps.
must have, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way,
Um,
did you guys notice this was a weird thing? There's a certain point near the end of the wormhole thing where his ship is like heading toward the thing and it looked like sperm.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
intentional,
Yeah.
right?
I think so.
It had to be. I was like,
I was just,
eek, 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 eek. Oh.
I mean,
I was-
What am I looking at?
like
It
we
makes
talked
sense.
before we got on. I was doing my own songs, making jokes about what I watched. like really a sperm?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. One of the
Yeah.
ships, by the way, I think it's the main ship they're in that's going to Jupiter. It looks like a Spaceball ship, kind of. It really does
Yeah.
look like Spaceballs a little. And
true.
there was even one sequence. I wonder if obviously Star Wars was inspired by this movie in a lot of ways. Even Star Wars must have been because of the way it shows the ships. But there's one specific shot where the ship was going by the camera, and I'm like, this is very similar to the opening of New Hope. Yeah, which subsequently was parodied in
Well-
Spaceballs, which will remind me of it.
Yeah. Well, like, I will agree with the fact that obviously it's not as stimulating as other visuals that we see today, but there are times in this movie where it is very
Yeah.
stimulating. Not even the fact that, oh, it looks so good for 1968. No, like there
It
are
looks
certain parts of
beautiful.
this movie where it just looks gorgeous today. Like it still holds up in a
Yeah,
lot of ways,
which is crazy.
visually. And not just the like the space visuals, but even like the set design is great. Um, the structures, especially at the moon base, was really cool. So yeah,
I think I read
again,
that, like, because Kubrick was basically saying when he was doing the movie that he specifically took the time, like, really put a lot of time in, because a lot of sci-fi movies back then, especially in like the 50s and stuff, were kind of cash grabs. They were kind of like the way horror movies are now, where you don't have to have great effects or anything. They were so popular that people were just watching them. And he was like, and apparently since he's such a weird, like, you know, such a smart guy, but one of the things I read was that because apparently he painted some of the mats and stuff for the movie, and that he said he calculated that if he were to do all of the stuff himself, it would take him 12 years. So he just hired 12 people, and then they all worked on the things. But he wanted it to be meticulously done, and it shows so well. It looks so much.
it
I mean,
does.
if you watch even like Alien, which is another great movie, which I think came out a year after that, that movie does not hold up as well. I mean, it holds up great as far as the visuals, but I'm just saying there's some other movies where when you look at those background paintings, it's so obvious it's a painting. Whereas in this movie, it still looked great. Like it just looks like space, and like when the planets are aligning and the obelisk is floating, I mean, it really does look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Trey, I'm curious. Do you like this one better than Clockwork Orange? Do you like Clockwork Orange better than this?
Do I have to pick?
Pick your poison,
Yeah.
buddy.
I mean, both really don't have a story. I mean, at least Clockwork Orange tried. So I guess I'll give that one the
uh,
edge. There was talking.
Yeah.
uh, but
The
yeah,
respect.
I'll do my overall thoughts, and you guys can jibber jabber if you want. But I just disappointing, I guess. You know, I expect too much, I guess. I think Matt made a good point. Why do you pick these movies if you're not gonna like them? Maybe I should know better now. I mean, for
I do
goodness
the
sake,
same thing. I do the same thing, dude. I want to watch that new Paul Thomas Anderson Licorice Pizza movie, and I don't know why I'm making
oh, me
myself do
too.
it. What the
And there's
fuck?
one other that came out the same year of the Kubrick's last movie that we need to watch, and it
Punch
has Tom
Drunk
Cruise
Love,
in it.
baby.
What?
Oh,
Like
No,
Boogie
Magnolia.
Boogie Nights. Oh,
Yeah.
No, so anyway,
sorry. Go ahead.
this movie. I mean, you guys are right. It was ahead of its time. Great visuals. Um, predicting AI. Great, good on them for predicting that. But my goodness, I mean, I don't need more action in a movie. I mean, I like action. I just want more. Tell me what's going on. Like, I hear the AI talking. I hear he's getting smarter. He's watching their lips. Love all that. Give me more of that.
Mhm.
I'm not invested enough to care about Mr. Yellow Bird floating in the space and dying. I didn't care. I mean, I was invested when I was like, how is he going to get in without a mask? That was cool. There was some positives in this movie, but my goodness, like, Matt, you looked it up. 80 minutes of no dialogue. That's crazy to me. So I don't need more action. I just want a little more story, a little more narrative. Give me something. Kubrick, you got one or two more swings on you. Do better.
I'm curious, Trey, have you seen The Shining yet?
I've seen most of it, and I do like it.
Okay. So, hey,
Maybe we should do Full Metal
you got
Jacket
one.
next. Because
I've never seen it.
Full Metal Jacket seems like it's a way more personal. It's not as abstract as some of his other movies, and it seems like it's kind of funny. Like maybe
Yeah.
that'll be the one that'll bring us all together. You know what I mean?
I mean, it has the
Instead of
iconic
Marvel
drill
Civil
sergeant.
Wars all the time. Yeah, we've had this is Civil War. This is Captain America 3, and we need Endgame, baby. We need a Kubrick that will bring us together and fight.
Magnolia.
Let's do it. Magnolia.
You know what that one's about?
No, I have no idea what it's about. Other than
Matt,
the
you
name.
should go second.
Yeah. You're good at wrapping shit up, so let me. Okay. Well, I'll just say this is one of those movies where, like Sterling said, I can't even argue with Trey because I don't even know that I disagree with any of it. And I'll say this. Let me say this because I feel like earlier I was so hesitant to agree, Trey, but I don't want nostalgia hit me in the comments. All right, so let me say this: if Kubrick made a movie that was all about Hal shutting down this thing, and it was a little bit longer and was about like that sequence was longer where it was more people and it was sort of like a horror type sci-fi movie, but it was Kubrick directing and shit, that would be awesome because that is probably the most intense part of the movie. And I do love the idea of the AI like slowly hunting them down. If they made like an hour and if he made an hour and a half movie that was all just that, that could be real. That would have been really dope. And I definitely would have been into that. But anyway, I appreciate the movie, and it's one of those ones where it's like I can't even necessarily back up the slowness of it so much, other than there's movies that I sit down that are slow and I really am getting bored and I'm not interested and I don't care for some reason. And I thought maybe this time that would happen because I watched this movie once before. I thought maybe it wouldn't hold up the same way the second time. I watched it the second time and I was into it. I didn't find myself getting bored. I was drawn into it. So, even if whatever my mind makes up, my body will just guide the way, So but anyway, I think it's worth a one-time watch probably. Just if you're like a film buff, it's probably worth a one-time watch just to be like, hey, this is, like Sterling said, it inspired so much. It was classic. The I mean, you have to give Kubrick this. The cinematography is so good. The only problem is he loves his own cinematography so much that we get a full nature documentary at the beginning. So no, I love the opening scene too. That's the thing. Anyway, I think it's worth a watch. But look, if you don't, if it's, you've heard us before, folks, and I think by now we know what we're talking about enough that you can really take our word for it. If you really can like deal with like slow, like interesting visuals for a long time, then check it out. But if you feel that you'll get bored, it's a 2.5-hour movie, and there's not a lot going on as far as there's not even really a ton of plot going on. They're right, then skip it. Just skip it. Fuck it.
Well, Matt, you took the words right out of my mouth, so I don't know what else to add. I'll just say this: this is definitely the ultimate film student film. I feel like this is a good lesson into one part of the history of movies. It's an important movie. So with that being said, watch it at least once. It's on HBO Max if you have it. It looks good and it's 4K resolution. I'll just say that it's one of the probably the best looking classic movies I've seen. So yeah, it was. But it's not one of his best movies. I'll just say that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, guys. I mean, I know I picked it, and Matt, you're right. I got to get better at this. I mean, I just set myself up for failure.
We've all done it to ourselves. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, we always say this. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment below. I know nostalgia is real. Whatever your name is, you're coming back. I know you'll comment. And just don't be too mean to Matt Sterling, all right? And we'll see you all.
With us.
No. We'll see you next time.
Cut it.